Hello and welcome back to Tips and Time Savers. I'm Danny Rocks, and in today's lesson I'm going to demonstrate two ways that you can turn Excel data on its side by using Transpose. The first method I find that many people are now familiar with. What we can do is, if our manager says, that's fine Danny, but I would prefer to have the months of the year not running horizontally across in row 7, I would prefer that the months of the year come down vertically in column A. So we can transpose our data set. So the first way that we'll do it is using copy, paste, special, transpose. The second method that I'm going to demonstrate uses the transpose function in Excel. Now, the transpose function is an array function, so there are several elements to an array function that are not familiar to many people. All right, so our first step in the process is to select all the data. Of course, we could simply select it with the mouse, but here's a quicker way when you want to select all of the cells in a contiguous grid. Select a single cell in the grid and use the keyboard shortcut Control A. So now that we've selected it, I'm going to use copy. Now I'm using Excel 2010 in this lesson, and I'm going to use Excel 2010 going forward. So now that we've copied it, come down and with a single cell selected, right mouse click, and what we want to do is we want to use paste special transpose. Now in Excel 2010, notice that when I use the shortcut menu, I have what's called live preview. So I can see what transposing my copied data will look like. I'll click OK to accept it. And now what we see down here, and I'll use escape to take it off the clipboard, is that we have the regions have been transposed from coming down vertically in the row to running across horizontally in row 16. Now we also have the formatting. So that formatting that I've applied to the labels gets carried over. The formatting that I applied to the totals gets carried over, and so does the formula that I use, the sum function, to total up January for each of the regions. Now what I want to do now is I want to illustrate how we can copy formatting. I really don't like this formatting now that it's been transposed. So one way to do this is to just select the cell whose formatting you want to paste. And I'm going to use my right mouse click, and in Excel 2007, Excel 2010, we have the MIDI toolbar. So I want to double click on the Format Paintbrush. And now I'm simply going to drag my Format Paintbrush over the cell whose format I want to change to copy the formatting from the cell that I've selected. Click it again, and there you go. Now I'm going to hit the escape key to remove the Format Paintbrush. I want to use the Format Paintbrush to copy this formatting to these cells. So since it's going to be in one single swipe, I'll just right mouse click with the MIDI toolbar, click once, and then make one application of the Format Paintbrush. And there you go. All right, now notice that what we have here is we have a copy. So when we did copy, paste, special, transpose, it rearranged our data set, but it put the values in as absolutes. Now it did keep the formulas, but what I mean by absolutes is I don't have a link to the source data. So if the source data were to change and I found that the January sales were only 75,000, well, you see, then I have made the change in the original, but not in the update. So copy, paste, special, transpose is terrific when you strictly want to make restructure your data, vertical to horizontal, horizontal to vertical. But what if you want to maintain a link to your source? If you want to maintain a link to the source, one way to do that is to use the transpose function in Excel. And let me show you how we can use the transpose function and what the gotcha steps are when we use any array function. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the structure. I'm going to copy the labels of our original. So I've selected it and made a copy. Here's another way to make a selection in a contiguous range. Control Shift and the down arrow selects all of the cells going down in that vertical range. Right mouse click and say copy, and I'll come over here and I'll use Control V to paste it. Okay, now for an array function, what we want to do for the transpose function, the array function called transpose, is we want to make a selection of all the cells that will receive the transpose results. And I'll put in equals transpose. And notice that there's one argument, the array. So now the array that I'm going to select is up here in my original source. I'm going to select all the cells that contain the sales as well as the cells that contain the sum function. I'll close off the parentheses. Now here is your second gotcha step. With an array function, with an array formula, you press three keys: Control, Shift, Enter. So before I hit it, CSE, C for Control, S for Shift, E for Enter. So CSE, and there you go. So now I have copied the information that was up here in my original. I didn't copy the formatting. The formatting doesn't come over. But look at this. When you use an array function or an array formula, notice that the formula that is in the array down here is B8 through M14. B8 through M14. That is one of the great features with an array function or an array formula. Now also notice that if I try to change a value, so if I try to change this back to 150,000, here's another benefit of an array function, an array formula. You cannot change the values for an individual cell. If you want to change the values, you have to make a selection of all of the cells that were in that array for the transpose function. So now we can see that with the array function, we do now have a link. So if I make a change in my original source, that change is reflected down here in the array, and that could be any number. I could just make this 100,000. And for October in region 1, I can see that that has been updated, even though the formula remains the same for all of the cells. Now let me show you another way that we can copy and paste the formatting only. So in this case, I want to right mouse click and I want to say copy. Now I'm going to come over here and make a selection of all of the cells, and I'm going to right mouse click. Now again, remember I'm using Excel 2010. And something that I really like down here are the paste options. I get a live preview. So if I want to do a simple paste, that's what it will look like. If I want to paste the values only, that's what it will look like. If I want to paste the formulas, if I want to paste the formatting, and that's in fact what I'm going to want to do. I'm going to want to paste the formatting. So rather than using the format paintbrush, and you can also find the format paintbrush up here on the home tab in the clipboard group, the format painter. Now you've seen how we can make those changes using two methods: paste special transpose, which will change the structure but will not create a link to your source, or we can use the transpose function, which is an array function. We first make a selection of all those cells that will contain the results of our array function, the transpose function. Then after we write equals transpose left parentheses, we select the array, and then we use Control Shift Enter. It's a CSE formula, a CSE function. And there you've seen how you can turn your Excel data on its side. And I'll look for you in the next lesson.